Hey all, welcome back once again. F1 2019 headed to round 16 in Russia. We are hot off the heels of a pretty solid finish in Singapore. One basically earned purely on our strategy and being able to run our first set of tires all the way to the wet, basically do one less pit stop and have a decent race from there. But we are headed out to Russia for this race weekend, and we'll see what we can make do there. So we are in the garage here. We are about to pop down, take a look and see what our messages have for us, see what the weather is like. All of our developments failed, which is a big, huge bummer. Like, we really could have used the jump up in the front downforce. There's some pretty high-speed sweepers here, and obviously extra engine power would be nice to have. So we are going to be again spending money in resource redevelopment. We finally have an all-dry race, but the rain is not completely gone from us. We are going to have a wet qualifying session, a teeny bit of dry running at the very beginning, but basically Q2, Q3 are going to be solid wetness. So we'll pop in and check out. We still have 6 weeks left till our regulation changes. We have five more units to adapt, so we're getting close to that switchover point. We're going to pop in. We're going to go ahead and run the practices like we've been doing on the little bit more worn components here. And we'll get ready to, before we go to qualifying, swap off to our little bit more healthy components for qualifying and race, since we can do that without taking a penalty, since those are already in our pool. Now hopefully we're going to be able to make these ICEs last till the end of the season. We've got, 5 rounds left including this race, 21 rounds total in the season, ending out with Abu Dhabi. It's possible we'll have to take one more IC, but we're pretty good on the rest of our engine components. But let's pop over to qualifying.
Welcome back to Sochi. We're about to be joining the action down in the pit lane as the cars get ready to embark on their qualifying runs. It always looked like the kind of track that asks an awful lot of the rear tyres, such as the frequency of low-speed exits.
Lots of low-speed exits means the rears are in for a lot of punishment. It's all too easy to spin them up coming out of a corner too aggressively. It might look great for us as spectators, as we love to see a car driven beyond its limits, but it's not going to result in a great long-run pace.
Alright, so here we are on the track. There's already water droplets falling on our out lap of our first lap, but we're able to make our be one of the first cars out on the track. We're going to go ahead and use the dry tires. And so we are across the start-finish line down the main first straight. Turn 1 is just that fast right-hand sweeper, totally flat out. The first real braking and overtaking zone is here. Turn 2, this very sharp right-hander, which leads into this very quick Turn 3 left-hand sweeper. Flat out under normal conditions here. So far, the track's not wet enough. Another tight 90-degree right-hander. Use a lot of the curbing and runoff there. Russia has a lot of these kind of tight 90-degree turns coming here. Another flat-out right-hander. You don't want to clip the apex there, so you can set yourself up for this next right-hander. Now, as we're coming through these qualifying lap here, we are starting to get some understeer because the track is getting a little bit more damp. And we're going to try and push as hard as we can towards the limit of these grips, but we're really having to feel it out. We're in DRS Zone 2, the second DRS straight of 2 on this track. Again, it's got some bends to it on the sweeper. There's no real true, like, straight the whole way. Like, turn 1 is in the middle of the first DRS zone, and turn 2 is this big S shape as we go kind of deep into that braking zone. Turn 13 is another great overtaking. Now we're into the 4 90-degree, 1 left, 3 rights of the final sector here. Not a great overtaking opportunity, but if you have the downforce to really handle the corners in this car, you can set up for the long front straight. But there we are across the line. P6 right now. We are in the garage sitting here. The rain has not stopped. In fact, it's just continued to get the track wetter and wetter. So we are sitting P6, and that's where we finish at, as nobody else is really able to put in better laps. The earlier you were out in the car, the better it was to run. So you can see the surprise, Lewis Hamilton wasn't able to get out soon enough to put in a good lap. So we jump to Q2, finishing up lap 1 here, and you can see it has rained far enough to where the inters are necessary. The Mercedes of Valtteri is on the top spot. at a 149. We are going to be several seconds, I'm sure, behind that mark. As we go ahead and cross line, about a second, 1.2 back, P4 at the time. We're going to go ahead and jump ahead to the end of lap 2. We've had a bit of improvement on our time delta, but big time oversteer there. And we're going to see what we can cross the line at here. Go up to P4, only 0.8 off of current top, but as the end of the session rolls through, we fall all the way down 13th. We are out of Q3, but we get free choice of tire to start the race on.
Good afternoon from Sochi as we prepare to get underway for the Russian Grand Prix. The championship battle has some time to go yet, but still expect no quarter to be given here on this circuit that made its debut in 2014 and has already seen some classic racing. It's full throttle for around 56% of the lap here at the Sochi Autodrome, a 3.6-mile run around the site of the 2014 Winter Olympics. 12 right turns and 6 left turns give us a total count of 18, with passing opportunities available into turns 1 and 13. Alongside me once again for coverage of today's race, it's none other than the great Anthony Davidson. So, let's briefly discuss Lewis Hamilton. They've got a really good lead in the championship going into this weekend, so it feels to me that they've got one hand on the trophy.
Certainly there are worse positions to be in, but it's vital they don't let complacency creep in. As soon as you let yourself think it's over before it actually is, that's where everything can and often will go wrong.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. A fantastic effort from Charles Leclerc yesterday puts him on pole, and Valtteri Bottas will line up alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Ricciardo, Vettel, Max Verstappen and Magnussen, Weber, Gasly, Hülkenberg and Roman Grosjean. Raikkonen, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Russell, Oldtimer and Albon, Perez, Butler, Lewis Hamilton and Lance Stroll, Sainz and Lando Norris starts from the back of the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track.
See if we can make it a top 15 finish today.
Well, that's the idea. We are 13th on the grid, not affected by anybody else's penalties in that regard. Now that I think about it, everybody's going to get free choice of tire because obviously Q2 was run in the wet on intermediate tires, and everybody's going to be able to do what they want. So based on our tire wear statistics during our practice programs, it makes for a tough choice because our projected and then our personalized, we could potentially run very long on that soft tire. Much longer than some of the other drivers. But that being said, I'm not sure I want to continue to push it that hard. So right now it's a very tough choice. Do I want to split the gap between these two? Do I want to go for a pure undercut and maybe even pit on lap 10? So let's see, lap 12 pit is basically flat with pitting on lap 11 based on my projected race time. And lap 10 is a little bit slower, but we get the undercut to be on a faster tire later. So we're going to go with that. But here we are, 5 red lights up, sitting on the grid, and then they hold us lights out. Away we go. A little bit of wheel spin on the start. Not a great getaway for us here. Albon goes by us. We're down to P14 down this main run. Sergio Perez is coming up the inside. We have to kind of run onto the curbing to avoid a contact there. We're down to P15. We're going to use every little inch of track there, barely scraping by the wall. Albon slams into the side of us as we get ready to head down turn 13, but we have the inside of Grosjean here. We've got a good run. We managed to slip across the track, get inside of Raikkonen and our teammate George Russell for a double overtake into the braking zone of turn 4, and we are up now from back to P15 up to P10 over a couple. We get a great exit off the next right-hander, shoot past Gasly, and now our old teammate and Nico Hülkenberg are battling in front of us, slowing each other up. So we are going to kind of try and settle in to see if we can't pick a good spot to get by once they are sorted out, which it looks like they finally are. So we are headed down the next main long straight, see if we can't pick some slipstream and get a good run into turn 13 here, the next big heavy braking zone. course, no DRS yet. We got to make it to start of lap 3 before that's enabled. Bit overcast, track temperatures are down, so grip is not optimal quite yet. But the weather forecast was to brighten up and get a little sunnier as the race goes on. We are in these tight 90-degree corners of Sector 3 now. Just kind of holding station in P9 so far. We've had a pretty good run, which I expected. We put up pretty good times in practice. Sorry, Ballard, we've knocked you over. We put up good times in practice. We had good race pace. It was really just the wet weather running that knocked us out and kept us from a good qualifying position. So I'm feeling pretty good about what we're going to be able to do in the race today. Obviously, we've made some good on-track overtakes. We're going to go to the outside of Turn 2 here to pick the inside of Turn 3. And we were able to get late on the brakes and cleanly pass Nico Hulkenberg.
Good job, nice overtake.
And now we've got a little bit of a gap to try and chase down our old teammate Lucas Weber in front of us, the German. You see there's still a pretty good train. None of the leaders are getting too far away. The gaps are still pretty consistent. Nico is hounding us. We have both of the Renaults behind us, Nico and Pierre Gasly, so we are going to try and open up a little bit of a gap to them if we can. We are running setup-wise, we're running a fairly high downforce setup. I think I'm running on the scale of 1 to 11. I'm running a 7 front wing and a 6 rear wing because, again, I just hate the understeer. And I try to typically run a higher front wing to try and get the nose in, which the car is finally starting to do. Like, it's taken a lot of aero downforce upgrades to get to that point, but we're finally getting the car to kind of nose into where I want it. So we're starting to get some better pace as we're not fighting that understeer as heavily. But so far we've been able to make up a little bit of ground on the Alpha in front of us, but the Renaults are still sticking pretty close behind us as we cross the line again. We should be starting lap 3 here, so DRS is going to be enabled. You can see that wing flip open. Obviously, Weber gets through Magnussen there using his DRS, and now they are side by side. And so if they are going to scrap it out, we are going to stay pretty opportunistic here and try and make up some ground on them. The more they fight, the better chance we have to get through. We are switching our ERS down to the low deployment, kind of recharge our batteries, use the slipstream to maintain high speeds on the straights, and then really attack our opponents in the corners. That higher downforce allows us to be more aggressive with our brake pressure setup, keeps the tires from locking up early in the braking process. But Lucas seems to be pretty well clear of Magnussen. We are definitely in DRS range though, so we gotta try and get a good exit here. Open the DRS, take that slipstream, turn up the ERS deployment. We've got a good run coming into the next braking zone here. We're closing up on Lucas as well. We're going to try and dive past, but we are too late. We lock up, we shoot past, so we are going to slow up, let the cars by us as we try to battle through. Hulkenberg kind of gives us a little bit of side swipe. We're actually on the outside of 3 wide there with his teammate. So that's why he didn't give us as much room to swing out, but you got to kind of leave some space. You can't just barge into our side pods. But we're able to get that position back. We've handed back Lucas and Magnussen their positions, so we're going to have to refight our way through there, but we are in DRS range of Magnussen once again. Keep that DRS or ERS deployment turned way up. We're going to go around, look to the outside. We've got a good run, a little bit later on the brakes. The second phase, he's able to lunge a little further, but we get our nose around him and cleanly through, heading into turn 3, the fast, sweeping left-hander. So here we are closing up now, trying to get ourselves into DRS range down the next long straight for a chance at overtaking our teammate Lucas, or at the very least closing up the gap. He's got a little bit of room, and that Alpha is pretty slippery in the straight line. We've done a lot of work on our aero, but since we're running that high downforce setup, we are not quite as quick as some of the other cars down these straights. So here we are, see the wing flip open there. DRS enabled, and we are closing up on the back end of him there, and you saw another car flash by a couple slots ahead, the Red Bulls, some of the top runners. We aren't quite close enough to make a move into turn 13 there, but we are setting ourselves up pretty nicely for Sector 3. We are just going to have to hold our ground here, make sure we don't make any mistakes through Sector 3 in order to get a good run out of the final turn and down the front straight into turn 2 will be our next big overtake opportunity. Now in Sector 3, there's so many of these tight 90-degree corners so close together, it's really not an overtaking opportunity at all. So it's just kind of hold station to set yourself up. We get a great run out of the final turn. Very early buy up through the DRS. We are able to get on the brakes nice and smoothly through turn 3, or turn 2, and then into turn 3 through the sweeper. Now, the one thing with this fast left-hander is that it's important to be running through clear air in that area. Running in the dirty air, losing that front downforce, you start scrubbing those front tires and causing them excessive wear. So it is much easier to run through that without a car in front of you. And it's hard to follow through there. So Lucas is still hounding us right on the backside here as we are 5 laps into this 27-lap race. We were kind of hoping to be able to get out of DRS range of him there, but we are going to have to crank up our ERS deployment to try and keep him behind us, as he's definitely going to get a good run off that corner with the DRS. But we swap back to the low ERS mode to try and recover some of that energy over the last second or so of that straight, start to harvest that energy as we're sure he's not going to be able to make it past us. And we pretty much run it in this low deployment mode, try and conserve as much energy as we can through Sector 3 to wind ourselves up for the front straight and back at the start of Sector 1. Well, there we have a big, we're trying to get on the throttle too aggressively, massive oversteer. Lucas is able to go by us, and since he was behind through the detection zone, he has DRS, but we don't burn too much of our ERS. We turn it up to get up to speed, but crank it back down to low, tuck into the slipstream so we're not going to lose too much ground here, but unfortunately we're going to be running through turn 3 in dirty air here. So we're scrubbing the front tires just a bit. A lot of these low-speed corners are a lot of wear on the rear tires, so we have to be careful getting on the throttle, but we also have to be kind of aggressive getting on the throttle in order to have good exits in order to stay with the car in front of us. Here we are setting ourselves up for the last little mini sector before we are getting ready to head down the next long straight through the DRS detection zone, through that right-hander, and we're going to step it up, flip the wing open, and see if we can't get a good run down past our old teammate Lucas. So here we are coming down the left-hand kink, setting up for turn 13, not able to quite get by him, so we're just going to slot in through Sector 3, set ourselves up to try and get a good exit out of the final corner, not lose too much time or too much tire wear through this sector. Basically, play it nice and easy and see if we can't make a good run through the first DRS zone once again. But so far, 6 laps in, it's been pretty action-packed. We've been in battles the whole way up. We've managed to move our way, have our position essentially, go from P13 to P7. Well, there we are, DRS open, ERS turn 2 overtake. We've got a good run, take the slipstream, kick to the outside, which was my much more favorite way to run the overtakes through the traditional dive bomb down the inside of that corner. It seemed to work in order to set up for the sweeper of turn 3, the left-hander. There we are, we've made it clear of Lucas, and now this time we got to try and push ahead. Max Verstappen, P5, some of the better front runners ahead of us now. We've got the Mercedes and them all ahead, but we're going to go ahead and jump ahead. Lap 10, we managed to close a little bit of gap on Verstappen, but we're going to dive into the pits, be the first in, go for the undercut on the traditional strategy here. We decided to, even though we probably could have run these softs too at lap 13, we were going to be losing time versus the mediums, so The undercut should be pretty strong here, and we're going to swap on to the mediums and go to the end of the race with a little bit more of a durable tire. There's our Tier 3 pit stop crew, a great run, just under 2 solid seconds for a 4-tire change.
Look after these tyres now. We want to finish the race on this compound.
We are on the throttle nice and early out of the pit exit because you can see the big group of cars running down the front straight. We are P15 right now. We managed to just hold off the group, starting with our teammate George Russell. Car's already out on the track, but they're battling Carlos Sainz getting through, so it would have been real rough for us if we had to fight our way through that group so early. Luckily, we have a fair gap to the cars in front of us as we jump ahead to lap 18. You can see those groups have pitted, and we are still P6. You can see the undercut seems to have worked as their pit stops have shaken out. Not fully to get us past them, but we managed to close up our about 4-second gap on Ricciardo to basically immediately behind. See that scrap? We managed to get by Sebastian Vettel back to 5th place there. And now we are fighting with the top teams on this track. Whatever it is, I just had a very good feeling, a good rhythm around this track. Turned in some good lap times, was basically punching above my weight class lap time wise. But we've got a Ferrari behind us that we have passed on track, and now we've got Daniel Ricciardo, the Honey Badger, the wily Australian, in his Red Bull right in front of us. So we pop the DRS open. We are going to get a pretty solid run since he was too far back to get DRS off the cars in front of him. So we are around the outside. He is pretty late on the brakes as well, so we kind of come together as he noses towards the apex, but we managed to avoid any hard contact, and we managed to get clearly through Daniel Ricciardo, and now we've got the other Ferrari and Red Bull, Leclerc and Verstappen in front of us. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton's been kind of out of this race. He started way at the back of the grid thanks to setting a lap time in Q1, was eliminated as the rains came in. He waited too long to set a lap time. So we've got, obviously the Mercedes have a great pace, as you can see that very pale blue dot in front.
With the rear wing system. Stay out. We can work on a fix.
Fantastic. As we are going to need DRS to make some of these overtakes later, our DRS system goes offline, so it's broken. We had DRS problems with some of our practice sessions as well, but in that case it was getting stuck open, and I was basically not able to do a couple practice programs because every time I go out on track it would get stuck open and I'd have to nurse the car back to the pits with very little rear downforce. And so thanks to a little mistake there, Ricciardo has closed up on us as we're getting ready to head down the next DRS section. He is going to have DRS on us, so it is almost a foregone conclusion that with the gap he's got behind us, he is going to make a pretty clean move around us, and we leave him space to get through to the inside. Don't want to fight that move too much without the DRS, but that allows us to at least slot in front of Sebastian Vettel and set ourselves up for a good run down through the final sector. Hopefully DRS will get fixed again, but if not, we'll at least run the slipstream. We'll be susceptible to what Leclerc can do, or not Leclerc, but Vettel. Man, having struggles with the names there. With what Vettel can do down the front straight.
0 seconds.
So here we are down that front straight. We've turned up the DRS, and Vettel's a little too far back to make a move on us. So we almost certainly would have been able to make a move on Ricciardo in front of us, but we just have to settle for holding station and driving carefully, saving the tires as much as we can to get a good attack once our DRS hopefully gets repaired. If not, we'll probably be running around P5 the rest of this race, but if we can get that DRS fixed, we can start fighting our way through the field once again. So we jump ahead to lap 23. Our DRS is fixed, and Ricciardo is closing up on Leclerc, who's very slow. We take the opportunistic line to get inside as Ricciardo's kind of backed up behind Leclerc. We get the double overtake down that straight and into turn 13, nice and clean, and we got the message also, Verstappen's got some issues. So we are up into the podium position, P3, and the P2 car has got some problems. So it is looking very good for us right now if we can continue to turn in these good lap times, keep the tires alive, which we seem to be doing all right with. But again, Verstappen's got some issues. We're a little too far back, it looks like maybe. Yep, a little too far back for a DRS deployment here down the front straight. But with his issues, look at that closing rate. We're able to close up significantly on him. So we drop our ERS down, charge up some batteries so we have something to attack him with. If he's super slow, we might attack him into this next sector. If not, we'll just wait till we get our get down the DRS straight and just get a nice clean blow by. But all ahead, Valtteri is expanding the gap in front. You can see he's about 2-3 corners ahead of us right now, as we are tucked in behind Verstappen. Seems to be able to handle his corners all right. Seems to be overall top end speed that he's lacking. Leclerc, however, has closed up behind us. And so we are going to definitely have that fight on our hands down this next DRS straight, so we get a good exit, get on the throttle, crank up that ERS and fuel mixture to get as much top speed as we can, grab the slipstream, dive to the inside of Verstappen and get by him nice and clean. Leclerc also seems to be able to making a clean move attempt. Does he make it stick? Not quite. Verstappen's able to hold them off, so we dial back the fuel mix. We're going to dial back the ERS deployment soon to get that battery recharge, because we will be leading this group and we'll be under attack down the next main straight. Hopefully Verstappen can hold up that group just enough for us to have a clean run up through the next straightaway. But here we are at 9.8 seconds back of Valtteri Bottas in front of us. So unless we can absolutely turn in some stonking good lap times, probably not going to catch him. As we jump ahead, the start of the final lap, Bottas 10.3 seconds. We never really were able to roll him in. We've opened up a 1.8 second gap to Leclerc, who has gotten through Verstappen, and that means we've got also the Red Bull of Ricciardo gotten through there. Really it comes down to not making any mistakes over these last couple sectors, this final lap. Obviously we're sitting P2. We could lose a position and still be on the podium, which would be our best finish of the season. But the way that Leclerc and Ricciardo are nose to tail behind, I think if we make a mistake that puts us in danger of losing the position to Leclerc, we will also lose the position to Ricciardo. So we will go P2 to P4 and lose our opportunity at a podium finish. But here we are getting ready to set ourselves up for the final DRS straight of the track. Hopefully it looks like we'll be able to maintain that 1 second gap, so they won't be able to trigger DRS against us, but we do go ahead and burn off our final bits of fuel. We're running in the rich mix because we had a bit of a surplus, just to make sure they don't close us down too hard. And we aren't pushing as hard through these corners because the tires are starting to get a little worn, and we just don't want to make any lockup mistakes over the last little bit. But here we go. You see the 2 dots behind us. Not a great overtake zone, so unless we make a major mistake, Bottas obviously pretty easily comes across for the win. We've got 1 more corner to go for our first podium of our career. When we cross line P2, our first podium of our career. The next stop on the big milestones, it's going to be P1. We're going for race wins next, but we got to keep the consistency up. Get on the podium consistently.
So another fantastic victory for the Silver Arrows. What do you think it was, Ant, that gave them the edge over the competition today?
Well, this was a real team victory. They put together a solid strategy today that appeared well suited to the conditions out on track. The driver did everything that was expected of them in the moment to really execute the team's plan to perfection, a shining example of how F1 really is a team sport.
And I can see the drivers starting to approach the podium for the victory celebrations. A real team victory today. Everybody played their part. Congratulations then to Mercedes, your race winners today.
And here we are, our first chance to be part of the identically scripted cutscene that is the podium celebration. It feels a little bit different this time with us actually being in there and seeing our own dopey faces, standing on the second step of the podium and taking the cheesy pictures and spraying the champagne, but it's a great feeling.
So, let's review the drivers' standings. It wasn't the best weekend for our championship leader, and their advantage at the top has been reduced. Some amazing talent out on the track today, but Anthony, who would you pick as your driver of the day?
I have to give it to Old Timer. There was a lot going on all down the field, but they were the only one who I really felt maximised their potential.
Let's move on to the constructors. Mercedes continue to extend their lead. Another team that excelled today was Williams, who make further progress up the table. I'm equal parts exhausted and elated with this weekend of Formula One. Be sure to join us for the next one.
We got ourselves another driver of the day, once again kind of helped by the weather, in which case the weather hindering us in qualifying allowed our superior race pace to really stand out. When we take a peek at the standings, we've moved up past Racing Point in the Constructors' standings. We just have Alfa Romeo to catch in that best of the rest category now. Lewis Hamilton ended up finishing 7th, so he jumped up 10 spots during that race.
I'm sure you're pretty happy with that. Did you struggle to get through all that traffic today?
Not really. I have so much more grip than the other drivers. Like, I really felt like I could just turn into the corners, really hang it out, and then use the DRS to get through in the straight lines.
Everything went your way today. It looked like you had a really good strategy for the race.
Yeah, we definitely had a good strategy and a great car for managing the tires. I felt fine pitting early onto the mediums so they'd make it the rest of the way.
Your team must be ecstatic with how you're performing.
You know, they are. I do it just to see the smiles on their faces.
You've had experience with Devon's fast, aggressive style. Any advice for the drivers he passed today?
Yeah, you just have to be as determined as he is. It helps to have a great car that you can rely on, though, too.
Great. Well, that's everything.
So here we are back in the garage. We're taking a peek at our rivalry breakdown. We finish off our rivalry with Lance Stroll, which our car really kind of teleported past him during that phase. So I think our next rivalry pick will be another Racing Point. It'll be Sergio Perez, though, because Sergio's AI is like OP. Like, he outdrives that car like crazy. So I think he'll be a good challenge. We seem to see ourselves around Sergio a little bit more than we see him around Lance. But we've got our practice program goal completed, and this being week 16, or not week 16, but round 16. That's another 4 races, which means we are going to have a new contract negotiation. So we're going to be able to set ourselves some new goals. The way we're at right now, our perks are already level 3 for all of those, so we're going to go ahead and keep those.
If you choose to,
but we're going to try and find a way to get more resource points. So likely will be to crank the team goal up to hard, hopefully. I think that's what I do here. We're tweaking with the finish positions. Yeah, we crank the team goal up to hard. We're putting ourselves a little bit more pressure on ourselves, but easy negotiations.
You'll be on this new deal.
Obviously, a harder team goal will need more points rewarded for us. So we'll go ahead and take this pile of 2,100 points into R&D. Unfortunately, we've got 2 failures that we're going to have to re-spend points on once again. 500 points there for that major upgrade to get respec. 326 for this aero development, which is a big time bummer. But we've got 1,300 left, and we're going to go ahead and try and get ahead, I think, on the adaptations. We're going to go ahead and do that major there. We've got 838 left, so let's see what else we can adapt. I think, yeah, we'll do the intercooler positioning, and we've got 606, so we've got about enough for another minor upgrade. Apparently not quite enough for that minor upgrade, not in the aero, but our chassis department's pretty happy with us, so we're going to take a peek and see which of these minor upgrades we want to go with. I think the roll dampers will probably be the best ones to go with right now, just because it'll help out with our tire wear statistics and situation, so we can run these tires a little bit longer, a little bit harder. not worry about them dropping off as fast, and hopefully we'll be able to start to keep pace the way that like Racing Point does. Right, so we should have, hopefully, fingers crossed, 3 developments coming in Japan. As you can see, the bottom of the midfield is starting to fall back to us. Alpha, McLaren are right there in striking distance. Toro Rosso is still right there with us, and it's not a huge jump to Racing Point either. Renault seems to have a pretty reasonable gap ahead. But we just kind of take a quick peek at our parts, and we'll be making some adjustments here and there. You can see our debrief from Carl, but that brings us to the end of round 16 of the 2019 season. We'll be heading off to a little bit of a checkpoint challenge in a minute, again off air, but we'll be heading to Japan to start the final legs of the season. Well, thank you for joining me once again. I will see you all next week in Mexico. Peace.